He is currently the company secretary and head legal of Endurance Technologies Limited. Prior to that, he was company secretary at Thermax Limited for a period of 14 years. He is a commerce graduate from Mumbai University and a member of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India since 1991. During his career span of over 3 decades in public listed companies, he has varied experience in different areas apart from regulatory and compliance matters under Companies Act, SEBI regulations, PEMA, and other corporate laws. He has contributed articles on different topics, including on compliance, namely compliance management, a business imperative, compliance by choice, a reflection. Welcome, Sudhir sir. Along with them, we have Mr. Sudhakar sir. So Mr. Sudhakar sir is a chief consultant at Mehta Mehta. He's a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India as well as fellow member of ICSI. He has worked with Reliance Industries Limited as Vice President Corporate Secretary for 17 years and with Berger Paints India Limited for about 15 years. He's a member of the Secretarial Standards Committee of ICSI and Vice Chairman of Expert Committee of Secretarial Standards of ICSI for the year 2021 and 22. Currently, he is heading the knowledge sharing sessions at Mehta Mehta. Welcome, sir. Today's presentation is being given by Dolly Thakker. She looks after the CSR practice at Mehta Mehta. So now over to you, Dolly.
Thank you. Thank you all the attendees to join this session. So last time we actually at Mehta Mehta started with this CSR series. And last time we had the CSR session on evaluation of CSR. Okay, so today we will be starting with the section 135. I would like to ask the panelists if they want to add on anything before we start with the presentation.
Yeah, Dolly, I would like to just add 1 or 2 things here. The objective of this session is that, as I always used to say, section 135 is emerging as a very, very important section in the Companies Act 2013 and going to be the regulator's favorite section because this is actually, for the welfare of the society and economy. As far as the building up of the nation is concerned, this section is going to contribute a lot. That's why government, the ministry is focusing on this particular section as far as the compliances are concerned. As we all know that in the recent past, the regulatory activism is increasing the pace for small offenses also, that the penal provisions are quite stringent. Under such circumstances, if God forbids any non-compliance takes place as far as section 135 is concerned, it is going to be a mind-boggling penal provisions are going to be attracted. So to understand the nuances of this, only we thought instead of having a couple of hour section, normally this is what used to happen, but we thought that let us dissect this corporate social responsibility under section 135 as well as the rules thereof in detail in about 5 to 6 different sessions, so that we can understand the nuances, we can understand the intricacies, and we can also understand the complexities so that the compliances can be assured. In that process, last week we have discussed about the evolution of corporate social responsibility. What is the difference between CSR as well as the charity and philanthropy activities are concerned, how that these two are entirely different. And today we are going to discuss about the how and which are the companies they are going to attract the CSR rules and regulations thereof and their applicability, And only my humble submission to every one of you is that, as I mentioned in the last webinar also, ICSI has come with a very detailed guidance note on corporate social responsibility. Therein, a lot of what's called clarifications have been given, in fact, because I was very closely associated with that guidance note. I know the amount of discussions what had taken place, how it is going to be beneficial to the fraternity. So do spend some time whenever you are in a doubt, instead of asking your colleagues or going through the YouTube webinars and all, just give a read to the guidance note and you will get a lot of clarity. I will give a pause here, Dolly, and you may continue.
Yes, sir. Sunil sir, you would like to say anything or?
No, thanks, Dolly. It's very well encapsulated. Nothing specifically to add, but one thing is for sure saying that the government is, or rather, it has decriminalized certain offences, and that's something which is very good on the part, which really was like imprisonment and certain. Those were not a very welcoming kind of provisions in the. So we can move ahead with the topic. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure. So I will just share my screen. So to start with, our today's topic is the decoding section 135 and applicable rules. So first, let's understand the literal meaning about the CSR. So CSR implies a concept whereby companies decide voluntarily to contribute to for a betterment of the society and a cleaner environment. A concept whereby the companies integrate social and other useful concerns in their business operations for the betterment of their stakeholders as well as society in general. So even before introduction of section 135 in Companies Act 2013, there were corporations, they were doing the CSR voluntarily. And CSR in India is a result of the Companies Act 2013. In fact, it is the first to have brought about the legislation to implement the CSR activities. So the concept of CSR has evolved over the years, and it is now used as a strategy and a business opportunity to earn stakeholders' goodwill. Moving forward, let's understand the basic constituents of the CSR. So first, it is a kind of contribution towards a sustainable economic development. It is again for to bring up the social changes and improve the social environment. So as I mentioned, it got the recognition and under the Companies Act 2013 by section 135. Also, there are rules, the company's CSR policy rules 2014 and the schedule 7, which is again for the CSR activities. And year by year, MCA has came up with the many amendments in 2018. Then in 2019 also they came up with the amendments. In 2020 also they came up with another amendment where they mention about there's a shift from comply or pay fine to comply or pay the penalty. And in 2021 also they have introduced the impact assessment. That was the major amendment in which came into 2021. And recently in last 20 September 2022, they have introduced the, they haven't introduced any new topic, but they have introduced many amendments, which was again that it was for the CSR admin expenses, it was for impact assessment, it was on ongoing project. So moving onwards, let's just start with the section 135. So for the today's webinar, I have covered the topic of the CSR applicability. Also, we will understand about the CSR policy along with the CSR committee and the disclosure provision that companies has to do on their website. And then we will go through some FAQs, and also thereafter we will take your questions. So coming to section 135, that is corporate social responsibility, the first subsection says about every company having net worth of rupees 500 crore or more, or turnover of rupees 1000 crore or more, or net profit of rupees 5 crore or more during the immediately preceding financial year shall constitute a corporate social responsibility committee of the board consisting of 3 or more directors, out of which at least one director shall be an independent director. So here, first we need to understand about that coming to the formation of the CSR committee, the first rule would be it is applicable to every company. So all the type of company has to go through this provision. In case of they are falling under this provision, it is applicable to them. And they have to check for their immediately preceding financial year. If it is applicable to them, they have to in case of their listed company, they have to form their CSR committee with 3 or more directors, out of which at least 1 director should be an independent director. Now, in case of unlisted company or in case of private companies where they are not required to appoint independent director, it shall constitute its CSR committee consisting of 2 or more directors. Now let's understand the definition of CSR committee, which is given under Rule 2. CSR committee means the Corporate Social Responsibility Committee of the board referred to in section 135 of the Act. Then there is one more
minute,
subsection.
Dolly, 1 minute.
Yeah.
Why can't you go back to the previous slide, please?
Yeah.
See here, as far as the net worth and turnover is concerned, already the definitions are available under the Companies Act. So we have to see those net worth and turnover definitions. Accordingly, we have to arrive at these threshold limits. As far as net profit is concerned, that is there in the section as well as in the rules itself. It is clearly mentioned how the net profit is to be calculated. It should be the profit and the profit as computed under section 198. That is number 1. Number 2, apart from that thing, whatever your profitability is there as per your profit and loss, always the question comes, you have to take profit before tax or profit after tax. It's always profit before tax we have to arrive at, not profit after tax. Out of this also, as per the rules, it is very clearly mentioned that any profit arising out of your overseas branch offices, that is to be excluded. In addition to that, if you receive any dividend from any corporate which is subject to the provisions of section 135 and compliances thereof, that dividend amount is also to be excluded from the profits you are arriving at. Whatever the ultimate profit you are left with, that is what you have to arrive at to get this threshold limit, as well as, to get your CSR 2% computation is concerned. Since it is connected to, this particular slide, I thought might be your other slides are there, Dolly, but I thought this would be appropriate to discuss here also.
Yes.
Kindly go ahead.
Yeah. So moving onwards, subsection 2 of section 135, which states about disclosure in the board report. So the company has to disclose in their board report about the composition of their CSR committee. Now, Rule 5 of CSR committee. So the company shall constitute the CSR committee as under. So in case of the company which does not require to appoint independent director as per section 149, shall have CSR committee without that independent director. In case of private company having only 2 directors on its board, CSR committee with 2 such directors, they can form the committee. In case of foreign company, which shall comprise of at least 2 persons, 1 person shall be as specified in the section 380, and another person shall be the nominated by the foreign company. Section 135(3) CSR committee, which is explaining the role of the CSR committee. So CSR committee is supposed to formulate and recommend to the board a CSR policy, which shall indicate the activities to be undertaken by the companies in areas or the subject which is specified in the Schedule 7, which is for the CSR activities. Also, they should recommend the amount of expenditure to be incurred on CSR activities every year, and also to monitor the CSR policy of the company from time to time. Now, there is also one more section which got introduced in recent amendments, subsection 9, which talks about where the amount spent by the company on CSR does not exceed rupees 50 lakhs. So here the subsection is clearly talking about the CSR spending amount. If it is not exceeding the rupees 50 lakhs, the CSR committee need not to be constituted. Moving onwards, there was one sub-rule 2 under Rule 3 of CSR, which was talking about that every company which ceases to be a company covered under subsection 1 of section 135 of the Act for 3 consecutive years shall not be required to constitute a CSR committee and comply with the provisions of subsection 1 of section 135. So this particular sub-rule, it got omitted by this recent amendments of 2022. Also, Rule 3, under Rule 3 CSR, this recent amendments 20.
Dolly, 1 minute,
yeah.
Please go to the previous slide. I want to just add on 1 or 2 things
Yes.
there.
Yes.
See, earlier this Rule 3 sub-rule 2, which was saying that once you got the section 135 subsection 1, the threshold limits got attracted. You have to, continue to with that for the 3 consecutive financial years. Once they stop attracting you for 3 consecutive financial years, then only you can discontinue complying with the sections, the provisions, that subsection 2 to subsection 6. Because initially 135.1 was like, it was not the threshold limits as per the previous year's financial statements. It was giving an impression as if it is any point of time in the company's life, if the threshold limits get together, especially the profitability part. Subsequently, I think if I am not wrong, in Companies Amendment Act 2017, subsection 1 was amended, but they have not amended the sub-rule 3 and sub-rule 2 of Rule 3. With that, what happened was that even if that threshold limits are not attracting you, but still you have to comply with the provisions for next 3 particular years. During the Corona period, the COVID period, a lot of companies has faced a big problem because several companies were into completely losses, 2020 as well as 2021 and 2022 also. But because of this particular Rule 3 and sub-rule 2, these companies were to, because in the previous years, they were having profits, they were to spend CSR money despite the fact they were in companies. A lot of representations were made and ultimately this rule got omitted and was notified from 20th September 2022. This is a great relief to the corporates as far as this omission of this sub-rule 2 is concerned. Thank you. Yes, Dolly, please
also, in case the to form the CSR committee is not applicable to particular company, then the functions of the compliance of the CSR thing, it should be get complied by the board of directors. Okay. So
here also one question used to come. Here also one question used to come. 135.9, when this subsection 9 was introduced, that the companies whose CSR spent was less than rupees 50 lakhs, they don't need to constitute the CSR committee. Several companies have asked this question that whether we can discontinue with the CSR committee. Technically, answer was yes, you could have discontinued the CSR committee, but now what happened is a recent amendment has come wherein it said that if you have any CSR money which is transferred for an ongoing project to a separate bank account, those companies, they have to, even if the current year's CSR money spent is less than rupees 50 lakhs, still the CSR committee has to monitor the spending of that amount. So you have to, again, if you are discontinued, you have to constitute a CSR committee again. So my advice and submission to all of you is that by having a CSR committee, there is no loss as such. By discontinuing, we are not going to gain anything. It is always advisable. The board is to be insulated to the extent possible because the board cannot look into each and every aspect, and CSR is a big project as such. So better to have a CSR committee which can go into the rigmaroles and the compliances of this particular section.
Yes.
Technically, yes, you can discontinue.
Yeah.
Dolly, we have one more question.
Yeah.
What would be the impact of the omission of Rule 3.2 for spending of 22-23 since companies would have started spending, even though the previous year loss was incurred?
Okay.
Is the question clear, sir?
Sorry, what is the question like? Once again, please tell me.
what would be the impact of the omission of Rule 3.2 for spending of 22-23, since companies would have started spending, even though the previous year loss was incurred?
See, this amendment has come into effect from 20th September 2022 onwards, right? If you have already started spending it, let us not that only because of the compliances only we are spending the CSR. If we know the concept of the CSR, it is for we are actually giving back something to the society. Whatever the projects you have already initiated and half the way, please complete it by all respect, number one. Number two, if you feel that you have spent some surplus money, which is not required by you to spend, you can set it off in the next 3 financial years. So you can take advantage of that. But don't stop the projects in between, because legally you are not responsible to comply with that. But yes, in case you have any liquidity issues are there, technically, since you are not obligated to spend that money, to the extent possible, try to complete whatever the work you have taken up. So as I was mentioning, you are not losing anything. You can climb the set off in the coming financial years.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. So can we continue?
Yes.
So
I think Sunil can also join wherever he feel like, I should not be the only person who is speaking. Sunilji, wherever you would like to kindly join and add on your comments also, please.
Yes, I'll definitely pitch in. Please.
Thank you very much, sir.
okay. So just in addition to what already Sudhakar sir has mentioned about this new provision under Rule 3, companies are allowed to keep unspent amounts relating to ongoing project in designated account, but have to utilize it within 3 financial years. Now they have to compulsory form, CSR committee, and the CSR committee will oversee its utilization. So that was the new provision which was introduced by Amendment 2022. Now moving onwards for the Rule 5 of the CSR committee. The CSR committee shall formulate and recommend to the board an annual action plan in pursuance of its CSR policy. So now what will be the content of the annual action plan? So first they have to mention the list of CSR project, then the manner of execution, modalities of utilization, monitoring and reporting mechanism, and need of impact assessment. Now, board can alter such plan at any time during the financial year as per the recommendation of its CSR committee with reasonable justification to that effect. Now, coming to the applicability of CSR, which is given under Rule 3, again, every company, including its holding or subsidiary and a foreign company having its branch office or project office in India, which fulfills this criteria, which is given under the section or subsection 1 of section 135, that threshold limits, if they are crossing that threshold limit, they are obliged to spend the CSR. In case of foreign company, net worth, turnover, or net profits shall be computed in accordance with the balance sheet and profit and loss account of such company, which is again prepared in accordance with the provision given under section 381 and section 198 of the Act. As we have seen here that every company, they have to check on their CSR applicability. So whether it can be there can be a cases CSR is applicable to subsidiary company, but it is not applicable to their holding company. So at independent level, every company is supposed to check on their net worth, turnover, and the net profit. So now let's see the applicability of CSR on different types of the companies. First, let's see for the private company. So for private company, public company, and the deemed public company, if they are crossing that threshold limit, which is given under the section 135 subsection 1, they have to spend their net that 2% of their average net profit on the CSR spend. Then coming to section 8 company, Yes, again, it is applicable if they are, if limits are triggered. It is again given under the MCA FAQs. Coming to foreign company, again, it is applicable if they are crossing that threshold limit. Then coming to the company which has not yet completed 3 years. So there can be cases where companies just got incorporated and they have completed just 1 or the 2 years. In that case, if the limits are triggered, it is applicable to them. And in that particular case, they can take the average net profit of made during the immediately preceding financial years. So if they have just completed 2 years, then they have to take the average of that particular 2 years net profit. Now, so let's understand about the CSR policy. So the definition is given under Rule 2, CSR committee, which again recommend the CSR policy to the board, and board of directors are the person who are going to approve the CSR policy. Now let's understand CSR policy meaning. So CSR policy means the statement containing the approach and the direction given by the board, taking into account the recommendation of its CSR committee. CSR policy is like a guiding principle for selection, implementation, and monitoring of activities. These are the principles for formulation of annual action plan. Section 135, subsection 4 of CSR policy talks about the board of every company shall consider the recommendation of the CSR committee and approve the CSR policy. Also, they have to disclose the content of such policy in its report. Also, place it on company's website if they have the website. Ensure that the activities as are included in CSR policy of the company are undertaken by the company. So here they have to look after the utilization of that CSR spends, which is allocated to particular project properly or not. So basically, CSR policy is a recommended that company should outline a CSR policy to reflect the vision, mission, and the goals on a broader level. CSR policy should articulate broadly target group, marginalized group, or geography, local or wider area, or sectors, which can be again health, education, or environment. So this is recommended in a general good practice, that to outline your CSR policy, which is again reflecting the vision and mission statement of that company. Also, if they can mention about the about their CSR project on their website.
Dolly, I could say some questions in the chat box. Why can't Ashwini pose the question to the panelists? Because some questions are really interesting.
So yes, the question is whether CSR donation can be done in kind.
See, I told in the beginning itself, let us not use the word donation. You cannot donate the money and you can discharge your CSR obligations. Okay, so by giving any donation, if you think that you are completing your CSR, that is not completed. You might be having some philanthropic activities you are taking up, but if they are not covered under Section 7, the Schedule 7, or not discharging those philanthropic activities in pursuance to the rules of Section 135, still you are not discharging your CSR.
So your voice is not audible.
No, what I am trying to say is that if you are discharging, suppose you are spending money for donation or philanthropic activities not in line with the CSR rules, then it doesn't amount to discharge of CSR obligation. Okay.
Yes.
Only thing is that, yes, you can contribute the money to the PM National Relief Fund or PM Cares Fund. And that point of time, yes, you don't need to do anything else apart from just giving that money to the PM National Relief Fund or PM Cares Fund and the Ganga Cleaning Fund. And one more thing is that there are 4 funds are specified that you can donate it. But otherwise, you have to do all the activities as per Schedule 7 only, number one. Number two, despite the fact those CSR activities are under Schedule 7, but if they are not covered under your CSR policy, then also it is not correct. You have to ensure that whatever the CSR activities or projects you are taking up, you have to ensure that those activities or projects are covered under your CSR policy. For any reason, in between the year, you want to take up some activity which is not covered in the CSR policy, you have to amend your CSR policy first before taking up that activity.
Just to add into that, section 135 clearly specifies about that companies is supposed to, spend as the CSR amount 2% of their net profit. So it is very clear that in kind is not allowed, is not a CSR. Yeah.
Correct.
So Ashwini ma'am, we can take up the next question.
Yes. So one question is annual action plan, whether it is to be approved by the board.
So answer.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dolly.
Yeah, so answer is yes. It should be recommended by the CSR committee, and definitely it requires the approval by the board. Yes, Sudhakar sir.
Yeah, I agree with you. See, number one, let me also say what is the purpose of this annual action plan. It is the responsibility of the CSR committee as well as of the board, not only to spend the money, but also to monitor the CSR activities as CSR projects on which the money is being spent. Similarly, in case of certain projects, as per the rules, you have to also have an impact assessment study after completion of the project, after 1 year of completion of the project. Unless until you have an annual action plan, you will not be able to monitor the CSR activities or projects implementation, and you will not also be able to have the impact assessment study. So CSR committee has to recommend the annual action plan and board has to approve the same. That's how you will be able to even control and monitor the spending part also. Because several times this question has come up that we have given the money to the implementation agency and the implementation agency has not spent the money and I am not able to recover it because they don't have the liquidity. And now we have to deposit that money that as per your section, the subsection 5 or 6, whatever it is. The answer to that is it is the responsibility of CSR committee and the board of directors to ensure that the money is disbursed to your implementing agency in such a way it is connected to your annual action plan. According to the work in progress, you have to disburse the money. Don't disburse the money at one go. If at all you have disbursed the money like that and you are not monitoring it properly and the implementation agency is not spent that money at the end of the year, whatever the deposits are there, if it is ongoing project, within 30 days, you have to deposit in the separate bank account. If it is CSR activity, within 6 months, you have to deposit it with the specified fund. There is no other option for you. You cannot take a plea that my implementation agency could not do it. What can I do? Because it is at the end of the day, you are the principal and he is your agent.
And just in addition to that, currently impact assessment is not applicable to all the companies, but in general practice, it's always good to spend on that on those CSR activities or the project where the company can actually see the impact, and also it is advisable to monitor that project to just to make sure that there is a proper utilization of CSR spend. And that's
Ashwini,
what the purpose of CSR.
Mr. Sunil also whether he would like to add something to these questions.
We have one more question, sir. So I would like Sunil sir to address this. Whether companies' goods can be used to do CSR, like a plastic box manufacturing company, whether it can donate tiffin boxes to children.
No, can you repeat that question, please?
Whether companies' goods can be used to to do CSR, like a plastic box manufacturing company, can it donate the boxes to children?
So there are two things. One is basically if it's going to promote and their own products, it should not be considered as an advertisement for their own line of business. In such cases, it will not be considered as a CSR activity. But if it's going to help a specific, see, basically, let's look at it this way, saying that CSR is meant for an overall large population or for the general benefit of the public at large. So the question which is being asked is a specific plastic manufacturer, can he distribute the, whatever that they are manufacturing? To my mind, it would be a very narrow view and may not be considered as a CSR activity.
Yeah, just to add to that, it is certainly not covered under CSR because FAQs released by MCA, you may read that CSR spent means you have to spend that money. You cannot do it anything in kind. If I'm having a land, I want to donate the land on which a hospital can be constructed. No, I cannot donate the land like that. Okay. So only thing is that if the land is there, on that land, if I'm constructing a hospital, then it is a different thing altogether. But I cannot donate that land as such. Anything in kind is not permitted. It is very clearly mentioned in the MCA FAQs, number one. Number two, a company, if it is engaged in any kind of what's called as production of any kind of goods. In fact, recently somebody asked us that it is a pipe manufacturing company. They want to, utilize as a part of their CSR activities. They want to give the pipes what are manufactured by them. The answer to that is, can they give it? Answer is no, they cannot. Only thing is, yes, you can buy from outside and you can give it. In fact, we might be wondering that in several times this question has come up when we have also put this question from ICSI side to the MCA. Why that when I am manufacturing something which is a very quality product, which we know it very well, and my product is a very efficient product, why I cannot give it as a part of my CSR? The experience of MCA is because several companies, what they were doing is the expired products, the non-moving products, the slow-moving products, the stale products, substandard products, they're all being pushed under the garb of CSR. This MCA came to know very well, and they said virtually a no-no they have put in that. A company, suppose say for example, if I have to donate rice and I am a rice manufacturing company, I have to buy the rice from outside and I have to give it. I cannot donate my own rice which I am manufacturing it. That is clearly there. So in this case also the plastic manufacturing, this one, number one, as company secretaries, let us not use the word donation, charity, philanthropic activities as far as CSR is concerned. And we have to also explain to the directors and promoters and the family businessmen that certain things what are prohibited are not permitted under the rules. What is the logic behind this? Say, for example, your managements might be asking you why I cannot donate my own goods, which I am manufacturing it. The answer you have to say like this is what the rationale, why that MCA is not permitting this. Right? And similarly, that one more thing also is there that if the money I have given to my, suppose one trust is there, can I spend that my CSR activities through the trust? Yes, it is up to the company. In fact, we may discuss it in detail, maybe in this particular webinar or maybe next week's one. If a company has to spend it, it can do it directly or through an implementing agency. The Section 8 company, trust, whatever it is. A company can itself also float a company which is CSR, Section 8 company. Through it, it can do the CSR activities, or it can constitute a trust through which it can do the CSR activities. But whichever the way you do it, at the end of the year, if it is CSR activity, that is year-to-year activities, you have to ensure the completion of the activities. You have to spend the money, each and every paisa, before 31st of March of that financial year. Whatever the leftover money is there, you have to transfer it, because you cannot say that I have given the money to my implementing agency, they could not spend it, it will not be acceptable. In fact, Again, the same thing. The ministry told us in clear terms, you are waking up in the month of March 3rd week and giving a check to your implementing agency to implement the CSR activities and coming to us and saying that CSR, we are not able to do it. What they say very clearly is, what ministry is expecting is, throughout the year, the CSR activities are to be taken up. It's not like that at the fag end of the year, you are cutting a check and giving it for CSR activities or ongoing projects. Earlier, there was a corpus. The moment you contribute something to the corpus, it is the end of it. You have discharged your obligations. Post 21st January 2021 amended rules, corpus is removed completely. Instead of that corpus, now the separate bank account is there. You have to go and deposit the money in the bank account, provided it is an ongoing project. In fact, though it is not connected to this particular slide, but still we are on the subject, I am also mentioning this. By any chance, during the year, you have taken up some CSR activities, not approved as an ongoing project, but half the way you have realized that you will not be able to complete the activities in 1 year, because it looks like that the spillover will be there in the next year also. You can convert that activity as an ongoing project by getting that recommended from the CSR committee to the board, and board has to approve it as an ongoing project. Then that subsection 6 will be triggered. That compliances you have to ensure. Thank you.
So any more questions?
Are spendings for promotion of religious activities like construction of temples, etc., eligible as CSR?
Can you just repeat question?
Are spending for promotion of religious activities like construction of temples, etc., eligible as CSR?
If I am not wrong, to my memory, in Schedule 7, protection of heritage is there, and protection of heritage, culture, etc., things are there, if I am not wrong. So please see that. In fact, ministry has also clearly said that Schedule 7, whatever the activities mentioned there, are to be interpreted liberally, not very conservatively. So if the word culture is there, so it is the protection and maintenance of the culture of the country. That point of time, yes, even construction of temples also will come under this. If I am not wrong on the, I have to see that, but I can say on the face of it, it is permitted.
Yeah, of course. I think I tend to agree to what Sudhakar is saying. That's perfectly all right, because there are many, not only just we are talking about, there are heritage sites also which are to be preserved and maintained. They are into a very dilapidated condition. And if any amount that is spent for those activities, those are to be considered for the purpose of CSR activities. And there's a it's very clearly mentioned saying that there is a liberal view to be taken. It cannot be in a watertight compartment situation.
Sudhakar, I have a question. Can I ask?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Please, sir. Actually, I have seen that some of the companies are having, some education institutes, hospital, etc. So instead of putting money outside, they are donating money to their own hospitals, their own school trust, or their colleges. So is this allowed in the CSR or is not allowed?
See, when your question is to be examined like this, number one, is it CSR activities or CSR project? Okay, ongoing project, I mean to say. If it is a construction of hospital, definitely you have to go for an ongoing project, right?
No,
Number
hospital
two,
is already there, suppose.
Yeah, hospital.
And I donate ambulance to them.
Okay, see, let us not use the word, sir, donate. You say I will contribute.
I got the point,
Or
sir.
I will,
yes.
Rather, let me also not use the word contribute. I will say I will spend money for ambulance.
Correct,
Because
sir.
for the furtherance of my hospital activities, I am purchasing ambulances and giving it to the hospital.
Yeah.
See, because as company secretaries, we have to be very careful about the words what we are using also. Let me not donate the ambulance. Let me purchase the ambulance and giving it to the hospital for furtherance of my CSR activities. Now, health, education, eradication of poverty, removal of hunger, etc., are already covered in Schedule 7 very clearly. Now,
Correct,
your
sir.
question is, if I am running a hospital, if I am running schools, can I spend the money? Yes, by all means, because CSR activities, not necessarily you have to take it through another agency or another company. If you are capable enough, if you have the ability, if you have the bandwidth, kindly do that by all means. Or alternately, normally what happens is, if your company is a listed company, it is always advisable to have a separate entity so that that entity will take care of the implementation part, because if everything under one company only, then the board will have a lot of responsibilities. So normally what we do is, in case of big conglomerates, you might have seen that in case of Reliance Industries, we used to have Reliance Foundation and all. Similarly, several companies are having separate companies, Section 8 companies or trusts through which they will do this thing. So you can do it on your own also. Absolutely, there is no problem.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks, boss.
Yes, Dolly, you go ahead, please.
Okay. Yeah. So as per Rule 9, the board of directors of the company shall mandatorily disclose the on their website, if the company is having the website for the public access. The content would be the composition of CSR committee, CSR policy, and the projects approved by the board. So here we will take some of the FAQs. Are CSR provisions applicable to joint venture companies? What if such companies have no business project in India? The answer is, any company incorporated under the Act, including joint venture company, will come within the purview of CSR provision if it fulfills the criteria prescribed under the Section 135(1) of the Act. Even if a company incorporated under the Act is carrying on business activities outside India and has no business activities in India, it still needs to comply with the CSR provisions if it fulfills the criteria prescribed under the Act. So in Section 135, we started with the word every company. So it means even they are the joint venture companies and they are not having any business project in India, they have to check their Section 135, and if they are falling under Section 135 subsection 1, then they have to comply with the CSR compliances. Moving onwards, if a company has only partly spent in its CSR obligation during the preceding 3 financial years, which is less than rupees 50 lakh in each of these 3 financial years, through the quantum of prescribed 2% CSR was more than rupees 50 lakh, will Section 135(9) of the Act be applicable to that company? So the answer is, as per Section 135 subsection 9 of the Act, uses the word amount to be spent by a company. So which contemplates about CSR obligation under Section 135 subsection 5 of the Act. Hence, in this case, the exemption from constituting the CSR committee as provided under the Act will not be available to the company. Third question is, can a company spend in projects or programs relating to activities mentioned in the Schedule 7 of the Act, but not specifically covered in the policy? So actually, this is already answered by Sudhakar sir. So if a company wishes to spend CSR funds on activities mentioned in Schedule 7 of the Act, but not specifically covered under the CSR policy, in that case, they can do the amendment in CSR policy by getting it approved by the board of directors for such activities. Then there is one more question. Can a group of 15 companies constitute a single CSR committee with representative of all such companies? So the clear answer is no. Every company fulfilling the criteria laid down in Section 135 subsection 1 of the Act should constitute a CSR committee for itself. So it is very clear that all the group companies, they cannot form the one common CSR committee. However, the company may align its CSR policy and initiatives as per the group policy which should be in accordance with the provision of the Act.
So Dolly, if you could stay put on the first question over here.
Yeah.
Typically what happens is in a CSR policy, when it is drawn up, when the area of or the projects programs that are to be undertaken by an entity, typically CSR policy is well thought through, and what is it mentioned is that any other activities which are covered under Schedule 7 of the Act and which may be amended from time to time. So one need not revisit or bother the CSR committee time and again if any new activity is to be undertaken or which is already covered under Schedule 7. So at the beginning itself, if the CSR policy is well drafted and worded, it takes care of these aspects.
Yes, yes.
And Dolly, one more thing in this section, your FAQ 4, that there are 15 companies, whether they constitute a single CSR committee, as you said rightly. So, no, they cannot. They have to have independent CSR committee for every company. But as you also rightly said, that all these companies can align their CSR policy with the group policy. That means that every company has to have its own CSR policy. It can be in alignment with the group CSR policy. And the group, they may set up an implementing agency. All these companies can contribute whatever their CSR obligation is there, and they can discharge. Say, for example, at the group level, they want to construct one major hospital or a big school, college, whatever it is and all. So education they have taken up or health they have taken up. All these companies can also take up the same activity and they can start contributing their money to that implementing agency, whatever the obligation is there. But please remember that at the end of the financial year or during the financial year also, they have to, each and every company is under obligation to monitor their, whatever the money they have given, how the money is being spent. So on quarterly basis, maybe half yearly basis, they have to get the project report, the progress reports from that implementing agency. They cannot simply say that, look, it is my own company, so how does it matter? No. Every company has its own board of directors, independent directors may be there. So it is their responsibility to ensure that get the progress reports. At the end of the year, they have to say that I have given this much money to the implementing agency. The implementing agency has to give a report that where all they have spent that particular money, how they have done it. In fact, if the what's called CSR spent is huge money is there, it is also advisable to have an audit report kind of thing also. Because in our company, we used to have that thing. We used to contribute to Reliance Foundation. All the companies in the group used to contribute to Reliance Foundation. And it was the responsibility of the Reliance Foundation to give the progress reports, as well as at the end of the year, a final report that this money was spent on so and so purposes, and along with an audit report also. So depending upon the size of your companies, about the amount of funds spent is involved, you have to take all these precautionary measures. This is the documentation. God forbids, if any regulator comes tomorrow, you have to establish your CSR expenditure and other things. You should be able to place this. Apart from this thing, when you are also filing your annual report, where all you have spent the money, what is the progress of that and all, this will be the backup papers for your annual return also, what you are filing with your board's report.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So, basically, these are the compliances which is to be ensured for the CSR. As of now, in today's webinar, we have covered the constitute of the CSR committee compliances, drafting of the CSR policy. Rest of the compliances we will be covering in the upcoming webinars. And moving onwards, if there are any questions, Ashwini ma'am.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So a lot of questions are being asked on the administrative expenses.
Okay.
So if company does not have a separate department for CSR, can the part salary of an employee be charged as administrative expenses to CSR?
Yes, typically that's not a problem. Part expenses can be apportioned towards CSR expenses, and that's not a problem in my view.
Yeah, see that administrative expenses are 5% of your CSR is permitted. So that number one, you have to ensure that administrative expenses of the company are less than 5% of the CSR amount spent. Number two, these administrative expenses are to be of the company. They are not to be of your implementing agency. Because several times this question comes, my implementing agency is incurring administrative expenses. Can I, what's called that amount to be part of this thing? Answer is no. Because implementing agency, when you are giving it to them, you might be giving some kind of a commission or whatever it is, or whatever the charges they are having it. So they have to ensure their administrative expenses are covered in that only. And similarly, what is your administrative expenditure, which is not falling, like you are designing, and what's called monitoring expenses. There are 4 or 5 things are there which are to be excluded. They are not part of your administrative expenses. Yes, in case you are not having a separate department, you can assign the job to 2-3 people. That salaries may be a part of your administrative expenses. But please ensure that they should not be, I mean, they are doing the company's job and you are debiting that to the CSR account. And another question come up is that the people who are working for the CSR activities, whether their salaries can be debited to administrative expenses. You don't need to do that, because the people who are involved in the CSR activities, their salaries are part of your CSR expenditure only. You don't need to sacrifice your administrative expenses portion for that. What we will do is, in fact, administrative things are concerned, Dolly has not covered in today's webinar. Maybe in the next week's webinar, this will come. That point of time, we will discuss in detail what is the administrative expenses, what is the ceiling for that, what is the impact assessment, what is the ceiling for that. These are, I mean, it is not unlimited expenditure. Their limited expenditure is there. What are the purposes for which you can utilize and for which you cannot utilize also, we will discuss it separately. But on the face of it, since the question has come up, this is how the answer is.
Sorry, I was on mute and I just about started to ask Ashwini. There aren't any questions. I'm a little surprised, saying that typically many a times what happens is companies having pan-India presence, they typically are approached by a lot many local government bodies saying that, like, you need to contribute towards the CSR expenses because the preference has to be given to the local areas. And it becomes a conundrum for such companies, because they may not be having the adequate team bandwidth, manpower to handle such requests. So aren't there any questions around that?
No, sir, I can't see any questions on that.
All right, fine. So, but Sudhakar, would you like to answer in case of your experience, if you have come across any such issues and how they have been handled?
No, what is that? I couldn't hear you. What is your question?
No, so basically, if large companies, like for example, Reliance has a pan-India presence, multi-location plants, then at various plants, there are requests from local government bodies saying that, why don't you contribute or spend towards CSR activities around our areas? So generally, many companies don't have the bandwidth, and how to handle such questions becomes a challenge for such companies,
This I can answer it. See, as a part of the rules itself, it is clearly mentioned that whenever you are spending the CSR money, first preference you have to give it to the local area where your operations are there. Say, for example, in case of, if you are having your operations pan-India, operations does not mean, if I suppose that you are having your branch, you are having your agents throughout, your dealers or agents, something like that. But where your factories are located, say, for example, in case of Reliance, we have 13 locations are there where our operations are there. In addition to that, as far as Geo and retail is concerned, it is pan-India basis. So because ours is a big conglomerate, we normally take up activities at different parts of the country also. But as far as the other companies are concerned, if you are having, say, one manufacturing location, say, for example, as a part of Uttar Pradesh, wherever your factory is there, you have to first of all give the preference for that area, local area only. Now, where you will get pressure is because suppose, say, for example, your market for your products, though your factory is in Uttar Pradesh, but your entire market is, say, for example, in Gujarat. So obviously, Gujarat government expects you, by you are earning so much of money from my state, you have to spend some money in my state also. So this is how you have to see that from where your the manufacturing activities are taking place, where major part of your selling activities are taking place, and you have to balance it out. At the same point of time, let me also tell you that there will be a lot of pressure from the political parties for some kind of donations to the political parties. But please note that donation to a political party is not discharging of your social obligations. And doing anything for the activities also, that is not a part of sponsoring anything for the political parties. They are not a part of your CSR activities. So one should be very, very careful about this thing. Recently, a question as somebody asked me a question that they have constructed a road from a particular what's called stockyard, and they have constructed a 5 kilometers road. That road was starting from a stockyard. That means where you will unload that, by the goods trains, where you are unloading it and putting in the warehouses. From where there to the factory of that particular company, they have constructed a road. It is about 5 to 6 kilometers. In that 5 to 6 kilometers, there are two villages are also falling. So they are saying, since the villages are getting benefited, it is a part of CSR activity. To answer that is not at all. No, it is not a CSR activity, because the road is mainly being used by the trucks of yours to take the what's called as whatever the from the warehouses, your raw material, your other material is concerned, to your factory, because the road is starting from there, ending to your factory gate. How can you say it is CSR? So my advice to everyone is not, let us not camouflage, let us not give a color to the CSR, because as I was mentioning that considering the regulatory activism, tomorrow if God forbids a inspection or investigation takes place, you should be able to clearly establish that this is a part of CSR activity. So it is better to take the experts' advice before just concluding it. And similarly, please ensure, if you, in fact, I always used to say this very clearly, if you ask your conscience, it will tell you, is it a CSR activity or not? Somebody asked me a question that they have constructed a school that is, what's called available to everybody. They're constructing a swimming pool in the school. That swimming pool is only for a particular segment of population. Is it a CSR activity? It is not for every student of the school. Had it been every student of the school, then it would have been a part of CSR activity. But what they are saying is that a particular segment of the children only are entitled to participate in that particular pool. It is not so. So any time, any restrictions you are putting in, it is not a part of CSR.
Sir, I can see one of the question. I think we haven't taken that question from Poonam. Can the annual action plan can be made during the year? If yes, when the spend for the same is required, once drafted, is it during the same year or next financial year?
See, always annual action plan, the mentioned it is annual means every year you have to have action plan. My advice to you always is that in the first quarter of your board meeting, whenever it is taking place, it is always advisable to review your CSR policy, take up your CSR, getting your CSR activities approved, CSR budget approved in that first quarter itself. If not, at least in the July board meeting, if it is a listed company, definitely you will be having a July or in the August, within 45 days of your closure of the that quarter, you will have your board meeting. So as early as possible, if not possible in the first quarter meeting itself, at least in the second quarter, you should review your CSR policy and finalize your action plan, finalize CSR activities, ongoing project or simple activities, how much money is to be sent, everything you have to do that particular thing. And similarly, you don't need to wait till such time. You can have an ad hoc approval also and start your activities, because say for example, if a board meeting is taking place, for the we are finalizing your balance sheet somewhere in the month of September. Until such time, I will not have my CSR approval That 2%, I don't know what is the money and all those things. Don't wait for that. Have some ad hoc amount approval and start your activities immediately, as early as possible. So annual action plan, every year you have to get it approved.
There's one more question from Tushar Arora. He's asking, before the amendment in Rule 3, Sub-Rule 2 in September 2022, our company was required to spend the CSR amount. Annual action plan was made and the budget was spent. But now after the amendment, just a second. After amendment, can we take the set off of the same and how to address it in the CSR 2 form?
See, any kind of obligation for spending, after the rules have been notified, whatever the new rules are there, they are notified effective 22nd January 2021. So set off is available only after that, not before that. And similarly, whatever your CSR obligation is there, you have to spend it or you have to transfer the money and all. That is applicable only for the financial year 2021, not for the previous years. Because as I was mentioning earlier, what used to happen was we were taking this thing, comply or explain. So in the board's report, several people started explaining that they are not spent the money. They are in the what's called a process of finalizing the CSR plans and other things like that. So answer to that is, whatever the money you are not spent for CSR prior to the January 2021, that means the financial year 21-22, though you cannot take it as a part of the year, though the rules were notified effective 22nd January 2021, you cannot take the rule for a part of the year. Those rules are applicable to you for the entire year, that is 2021 financial year. Prior to that, if any unspent money is there, you don't need to transfer it to the specified fund. Prior to that, you have spent any excess money, you cannot claim the set off. Another question also come up is that in case of set off, that is the next 3 financial years you can set off. Somebody asked me a question that in the first 2 financial years, that is the next 3 financial years, out of that first 2 financial years, they don't need to spend any CSR obligation because the company was into losses. So how many years I have left with? Is it that the 2 years to be eliminated for the next 3 financial years? Answer is no. Your lost opportunity in 2 financial years. So you have an opportunity to set off only in the next 3rd financial year only. If in the 3rd financial year also there is no CSR obligation, you cannot set off the money at all. MCA FAQ and the ICSA FAQs are also very clearly about this. It is, dealt with suitably.
Okay. So, sir, there are many questions coming up on the concept of capital asset administrative expenses. So, I would like to say that we are coming up with the whole series on the CSR. So, in upcoming webinars, we are going to cover up this concepts. And last question we will take is, if a government office request for computers or a forest department ask for a vehicle to travel to the forest, or government hospital ask for some beds or any other form, or a local authority office ask for some office equipment, can this expenditure considered under CSR?
See, somebody asked you for an ambulance, I have given an ambulance. Is it a part of CSR? You cannot say like that. CSR, one-off activity cannot be said that it is a CSR activity. I have given an ambulance here, I have given a stretcher here, I have given a hospital bed here. No, it is not like that. CSR is a particular CSR activity means what? Any activity, you have to have a beginning and you have to have an end. And it should not be one-off activities. So there's somebody has asked me, by you give me a jeep and I have to go into the forest department, asked me. No, it is not. But yes, at the same point of time, if you are spending money for the development of horticulture, yes, horticulture is covered under Schedule 7. You are developing beautiful gardens, and in between the what's called wherever that chaurastas are there, in any city, you are developing gardens there and putting some fountains and other things. Yes, that is permitted as a part of CSR activity. But the moment you are having a small fountain and a very big board contributed by so-and-so company as a part of the CSR, no, it is not so. You cannot get any mileage out of that. So don't put your advertisements, don't put your banners, don't put your, even if you the sponsor activities, they're not part of CSRs. Don't get any mileage out of CSR. Do it dispassionately.
Okay, we will take up one more question. Can a senior officer
But just
or a-
1 minute. Let me add one thing there. Definitely, in your annual reports, you can definitely mention what are the CSR activities, what is the CSR contribution, how you are discharging your obligations. You want to have a good write-up. By all means, yes, you can do it. Similarly, in your company brochures, you want to have some paragraphs about your CSR activities. Yes, definitely, or your CSR policy. By all means, you can do it. Only what I'm trying to say here is that by putting big banners and big huge signboards, you cannot get any publicity while discharging the CSR obligations.
Yeah. Okay. So the last question is, can a senior officer or a trustee of the same trust be appointed as an independent director of the company during current or next financial year 23 and 24? If yes, then can the company fund the same trust again in CSR in 2023-24?
See, when you are appointing the same trustee of the trust, if I am not wrong, in case of the independence of the criteria of independence, it is there that if any charitable trust or anything is the CSR trust are there, I think charitable trust only if it is getting 25%, more than 25% of that trust receipts from this company, then the trustee, if he is an independent director, he will not, it will affect his independence, definitely.
Yeah.
So in case of the independent director and the trust is concerned, the trust is not, it is not getting any kind of charitable things. It is only a implementing agency. The obligations of the CSR obligations of the company are being discharged by the trust. So even if the trustee is an independent director on your company, on the face of it, with the limited information what you have given to me, it will not affect his criteria of independence. But don't take it on the face value, because whenever we are talking about criteria of independence, you need to examine a lot many things in detail before saying yes or no.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, just to add to what is being said, is it will also attract related party transactions. So
Correct.
one needs to examine in totality the transaction. It cannot be in isolation. There could be many other various implications to that.
Yeah, very well said, Sunil. Very well said.
I think we have answered all the questions.
Yeah. Yes, Ashwini ma'am.
Okay, so thank you, Sunil sir. Thank you, Sudhakar sir, for the valuable inputs you have given during the session. Thank you, Dolly, for a crisp presentation on CSR, section 135. And we'll also be coming forward with the rest as you have discussed. We'll be taking up more topics under CSR in forthcoming sessions. So we will see you then. Thank you. Thank you for your time, everybody.
In fact, Ashwini, before you conclude, what I would like to say to the participants is, in case they want the webinars on any particular subjects where they want clarity, clarifications, considering the complexities, they may write to you that, what are the programs on which they want these webinars. And
Okay.
especially some important aspects, wherever they are there, we may not be able to complete that in 2 hours program. So at that point of time, once the CSR webinars are going to be over, we may take up another series like this also. So
Sure.
let them write to you and we will consider that.
Okay, sir. Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Sunil
Thank
sir
you.
and Sudhakar sir,
Thank you for inviting
giving
us.
your inputs.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you all the participants
Thank you.
for such a questions. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.